right, welcome back to the Real Estate Play-by-Play.
Investing in real estate.
Awesome topic today.
It's a big topic.
This
comes up a lot.
Yeah. So where do we want to start? I guess, to go back to kind of a point of reference, if we're talking about real estate and buying your own house to live in is a football game, investing in real estate is a basketball game.
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely a different sport altogether.
The rules are different. The plays are different. All the way around, you need to be looking at different things from a different angle.
Yeah. And, if you go back in history and you look at different players, such as we talked about, Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, Michael Jordan, those were multi-sport athletes. Yeah. And, they played in the NFL, they played baseball, they played basketball. It's different. It's different when you play a different sport. Now you still have coaches.
Yes.
That guide you and give you the rules and tell you how to win and come up with strategies, but the game is just completely different. And I think buying an owner-occupied property, if you're playing in a football game, is different if you're going to buy a second home.
Yes.
And you're going to play in a football game.
Definitely. Let's talk about that right away, right? Yeah. So, I think the very first thing that people need to realize is when you are buying a property that you don't plan on living in, unless you're paying all cash, the rules are completely different from a mortgage standpoint. Completely different. And that's one of the questions that we get all the time is what's the difference between owner-occupied, second home, and investment property?
Right.
So an owner-occupied property, pretty self-explanatory. It's a property that you intend on living in. And here's the very important asterisk. You intend on living there for at least 12 months. That is the commitment that you're making to the mortgage company when you get an owner-occupied loan, is that you intend to live there for 12 months.
And in some cases, they do follow up and check.
Yes, I have had it happen where after closing, they have crazy ways of investigating this stuff, and they will find out if you have not moved into the property. So it's really important, plus it's mortgage fraud, and we don't want that. But
no,
it's super important that you are following the rules for the game that you're playing, and you're going into the right bucket. So if you plan on living in the property for at least 12 months, you get an owner-occupied rule. That's where we have lower down payment options and things like that. We're going to save that for another discussion. If you are planning on living in the property some of the time, so for example, I have a place in Tahoe, and we go up there several times a year, but we also rent it through like an Airbnb and things like that. That's considered a second home. And there's a lot of rules around second homes, but generally needs to make sense as somewhere that you would vacation. So if you substitute the words second home for vacation home, it makes a little bit more sense. But somewhere that you plan on staying some of the time, and you could potentially rent it out, but you're not going to be renting it out to someone who's there on a long-term basis.
So like, for example, do they ever look at mile radius? So say I live inland, but 2 miles away is a beach. Could I technically buy a house out at Stinson? Or would they look at that as it's too close mile-wise?
It's where it's a gray area. Generally speaking, they want a second home to be about 100 miles away from your primary home. Mm-hmm. But your example is perfect, right? We live in, Marin County, Stinson
Tahoe, 4 hours away.
Yeah, we're 30 minutes from everything, which is awesome. But if it's a vacation destination or recreational community, you can definitely make the case to make that a second home. So second homes in the most recent last couple of years have had some penalties in place on interest rates. They used to be the same types of loans as owner-occupied, and they're not any longer. They've gotten a lot more expensive. There's just a shortage of homes available for people to live in, and so they've changed the rules a little bit.
Right, because in the past, sometimes the game changes and you got to adjust, throw an audible. So like, for example, in the past, an owner-occupy rate, maybe the rate was 5%, and a second home would be very similar to the owner-occupied rate. And then if you were doing an investment property, a non-owner, you're looking at maybe a rate of like 7%. Now, as you were saying, the rates have kind of changed. Second homes are now more closer to investment properties.
Right. Yep. And so they've definitely changed the rules over the last couple of years, and it might be temporary. We don't know. That's the game of real estate. Things change unexpectedly. But investment properties, which is our main topic for today, Investment properties are generally going to be a higher interest rate from an owner-occupied loan, and you're generally going to need a lot more down payment.
Okay. And the question I think I get a lot from people is, if I have some extra money, should I invest it in the stock market? Should I invest it in real estate? And I always think of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the past president, and his famous quote that probably most of you know: real estate cannot be lost or stolen, nor can it be carried away. Purchased with common sense, paid for in all full, and managed with reasonable care, it is about the safest investment in the world. And I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Putting your money in real estate is extremely safe.
Yeah. It doesn't mean there's not going to be ups and downs and things like that, right? Any market fluctuates. But, my dad always told me growing up, and I think it came from a Mark Twain quote, they're not making any more dirt.
No, they're not.
The world is as big as it's going to get. And, anytime you have a supply and demand kind of situation, it becomes scarce, and scarce becomes something that increases prices. And so over time, real estate is an amazing investment, especially in California. California is a very desirable place to live, and we see huge appreciation that I don't think you could find necessarily in the stock market. It doesn't mean that there's not huge wins, right? Some people do very well in the stock market. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, I don't know any other investment that you can turn a small investment into a large amount of equity in a relatively short period of time.
Right. I would agree. And I mean, over COVID, when I was pricing out houses, believe it or not, if somebody bought their house, let's say in 2015, it was an average of $100,000 a year they were making from the point of selling it in 2020, 2021, 2022. I mean, $100,000 a year for not even doing anything to your house. Now, say you actually fixed it up. Right. And put some paint on it, new carpet, then that's even more. I mean, I don't know a lot of areas where you can put, like you said, a little bit of money into it and make so much money year over year. Right. So we know investing in real estate pays off. It's just shown over time. It's shown over history. It's backed up. Okay. So the difference, I would say, in buying an owner-occupied home versus a non-owner, what are the differences? If I want to invest in real estate, what do I need?
So there's a couple of gameplays that you can come in with, right? So the most traditional is you're just coming in and you want to buy an investment property. You're going to need a 20% down payment on something like that. And that scares some people because that's a big chunk of money in some areas like Marin County where we're at. But generally speaking, you're going to need 20%. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is, unlike regular owner-occupied loans, you can't have a gift for the down payment. And so that 20% needs to be all your own money. You can't borrow it. You can't get it from mom and dad. Now, you could invest with other people. So if you and your brother wanted to buy an investment property together, you could both go in on it and both be on the loan and those kind of things.
That's good to know.
20% down generally for investment property, and you're looking at higher interest rates.
Okay. And now, what is a DSCR loan?
That is a really cool program that has come out over the last several years. And so for individuals who may not have, a high enough income to qualify on an investment property, or they're self-employed and they write everything off and all those kind of things, a DSCR loan is a loan specifically for investors. It's only for investment properties, and it qualifies based on the property all by itself. So plainly said, if the mortgage payment is $2,000 a month and the rent is $2,000 a month, you qualify for a DSCR loan.
That's pretty cool.
It is really cool. So it qualifies based on the income of the property. Now, regular conventional loans will also take into consideration the potential rents on the property, which is really cool. And it doesn't already need to be rented. So if you're buying an investment property, even if it's vacant, we will take into consideration the market rent that the appraiser determines and factor that into the overall debt ratios.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's really cool. So there's a couple of different ways that you can come at getting an investment property. Option one, plain and simple, you come up with your 20% down and you go and you buy an investment property. Mm-hmm. But not everybody has that, right? So there's other ways that you can create ownership in real estate long term if you have a little bit more, willingness to kind of be creative. And so one of the strategies that a lot of people use is actually living in the property first. which is cool. And it's totally legal and allowed. It meets all of the requirements. But you can buy a property with 5% down payment on a conventional loan, live in it for 12 months, and then convert it to a rental property after the fact. So when you do that, your second property that you go to buy is now your new owner-occupied property, and you qualify again for 5% down.
That's pretty neat.
It's very cool. It's a great way. It's how I had my rental property. So originally, my husband and I bought a property using FHA financing, 3.5% down. So, it was probably about $25,000 that we put into it, and we had to borrow that from our retirement account to do it. We started small, and we took that property. We lived in it for several years, and then when we went to buy our new property, we kept that property and turned it into a rental property.
Yeah, that's really neat. Now, sometimes now, in that, let's say, scenario, sometimes people can't qualify to keep both properties. They can't keep it as a rental and then buy a property. Maybe they need to sell it to get that down payment to purchase the next property.
Right.
And in that case, if you hold it for 2 years, you avoid the tax consequences. And you do see that a lot with investors purchasing a property, living in it for 2 years, fixing it up, and then turning around and selling it and using that money as your down payment for your next property, like a stepping stone.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's a great point. And obviously it's important to talk to your tax professional. But when you live in a property for at least 2 years, you are eligible to take $250,000 worth of gain. So if you buy the house for, $1 million and you sell it for 1.25, that entire $250,000 is tax free.
As a single person.
If you're married, it's $500,000.
You get more.
So you get more. So a married couple could buy a house for $1 million, live in it for 2 years, fix it up, and sell it for 1.5 million, pocketing the entire 500,000 without taxes.
Right.
Which is crazy.
Crazy. And a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
Another question that I get is, I'm living in a property and I want to buy another property. Can I 1031 exchange it?
Great question.
And again, talk to your tax person.
Yes, always the asterisk. Talk to your tax person. We are not tax professionals.
However, a 1031 exchange.
Yeah. So a 1031 exchange is a real estate code, and it allows you to transfer your tax liability.
But it has to be like kind.
So it's only for investment properties. So if you are living in a property, it generally will not qualify for a 1031 exchange. There are some crazy weird loopholes where, if you had a portion of the property that you ran your business out of, you could 1031 some of it and things like that. So, but generally speaking, it's investment property for investment property.
So if you had a rental and you wanted to sell that rental to, maybe you had a single family home and you wanted to sell it because you want to buy a triplex.
Right.
You can do something like that. It'd be like kind of rental for a rental.
Exactly. A rental for a rental. And so that would allow you to transfer that gain into the new property. So you're not necessarily getting the taxes waived, but you're moving that tax liability into the next home. And as long as you just never finish selling, right? You're always selling and 1031 into the next property, you'll avoid paying taxes on that, because capital gains tax can be pretty pricey.
Yeah.
Pretty pricey.
I think another question that comes up a lot with buyers is, okay, I want to invest in real estate. Where do I go? Do I go to a mortgage broker? Do I go to a bank? Can somebody like you, Danielle, do an investment property and, a primary? And then that seems...
I know
kind
it
of
seems
basic,
so obvious to me, and I just assume that everybody knows that, but I do get those questions all the time. So mortgage lenders, brokers, we are generally licensed by state. So I can do any type of mortgage loan anywhere in California. I'm also licensed in Nevada, but anywhere in California, I can do any type of mortgage loan. And as a mortgage broker, I have access to all kinds of different programs that your local bank may not have. Local banks kind of do their own thing, and they might have just one type of program, but they may not have, for example, a DSCR loan. It's just not available to them. Credit unions may not have a DSCR loan. So working with a broker, I think, is super, super, super important. And it's really, really important to get your game plan in place ahead of time.
Right. Absolutely.
Ahead of time. You need to know what all the numbers crunch out. You need to know, what kind of interest rate you're looking at, what your monthly payments are going to look like, and will the property cash flow?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's where a realtor could help you. My clients can come to me and say, hey, I want to buy this property as a real estate investment, but how much do you think I could rent it for? Right. Because in some situations, it might not make sense. Now, as a real estate investment, if you're breaking even, it's a win-win, in my opinion. Because another year or two, you're going to be making money off that rental. Right. Actually, in even some situations, even if you're losing like even a little bit, it still could be a winning situation to invest in that property.
It's that same philosophy, right? You are treating this like an investment. And so if your mortgage payment is, let's say, $3,000 a month and you can get $2,500 a month for rent, think of it as you are saving $500 a month into an investment, just like you would the stock market, right? 5-10 years from now, not only will rents increase over time, but that property is going to be worth, significantly more than it is today.
Yeah. So it's interesting, you brought up your dad who said, the dirt, they're just not making anymore. Yeah. And I think for me personally, I saw my parents investing in real estate, which made me want to invest in real estate. And now we have rentals. We have 4 kids and we have 3 rentals. We want to get one more with the goal that, they have somewhere to live when they're getting older. They could each have a property. Absolutely. And I think, it's interesting too, when we're talking about changing sports and sports being different investments. Yeah. I remember, and some of you sports fans out there might remember, that Michael Jordan, even though he's well known for playing basketball with the Chicago Bulls, after his father passed away in the early 90s, switched over to playing with the Chicago White Sox in their minor league program because he had such a love for baseball with his family, with his dad. And that brought that out. And, seeing your family members invest in real estate really takes on a new meaning for the next person coming down the next generation. Yeah. And if you can invest in real estate, definitely 2 thumbs up, go for it and try to do it. And even if you're just thinking about it, call your mortgage broker, call your realtor, find out what it takes to qualify. Right. And even if you can't do it today, find out how you can save to maybe qualify in the next 2 or 3 years to invest in that real estate.
And maybe it's a multi-step plan, right? So a lot of times we work with people way, way early in the process. Maybe we need to do a cash out refinance today on their current owner occupied property, save some of that down payment, wait 6 months, whatever we're going to do to come up with the real estate, with the investment property purchase. We're always looking into the future of, what's this going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Maybe that house, that condo that you're buying today might be a great rental property 5 years from now when your family grows.
Right, absolutely.
There's so many options. My family was exactly the same. My parents bought fixer properties. My dad was a contractor. Most of my childhood, we were in some kind of rental property, painting and doing all the kind of work. And that's carried forward for me. And I mean, honestly, it has been such a big contribution to our family, the amount of equity that we have gained over a very short period of time. I can't think of any other better wealth building strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Invest in real estate.
Invest in real estate. I think that's a wrap.
I think that's a wrap.
All right,
Thank you for joining us today. Real estate play-by-play.